Nothing good ever happens when you're in a place you shouldn't be. It wasn't my fault. I was just sitting at the traffic light when a guy pulled up next to me, gesturing for me to roll down the window. "You've got a flat tire," he said. I thanked him and pulled into the Walmart parking lot. I got out and looked. I could see a screw head embedded in the tire tread and the air was escaping slowly. Great. Now what? I decided to go in and get a can of that gooey stuff. When I came back out, I removed the screw. Big mistake. Now the air really started to whistle out. I screwed it back in and grabbed some air at the gas station in the parking lot. It was only 15 miles from home and I checked it several times. If it started to go down too much, I'd put in the slime. There was a grocery store about 5 miles from home and I could see the tire was getting pretty low in the driver's side rearview mirror. I stopped and they didn't have time to test the slime, so I put it in and out came a green gooey substance. I guess they call it slime for a reason, but the hissing of escaping air stopped. I was about to head back to my car when a truck pulled up. It was one of those giant ones with huge tires. It was so tall you needed a ladder to get in. I recognized the truck from somewhere. The door opened and out stepped a tall, blonde guy wearing cowboy boots and a massive belt buckle. I chuckled a bit, but it faded halfway when the passenger door swung open and a beautiful woman with black hair jumped out. I recognized her instantly. It was Rachel, the woman I'd been married to for the past 18 years. But what the hell? I was parked on the side and they didn't even notice my car. It was a company car, one of those small imports, boxy and unassuming. I guess they were holding hands as they walked into the store and she was laughing in his face. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. All I could do was stand there like a fool. Oh, now I remembered where I'd seen the guy before. He worked at the same company as Rachel. She was the director of a mental health clinic and he was one of the social workers. I'd seen the truck at their building. The question was, what was Rachel doing with him? I couldn't think of his name. Finally, it came to me, Jerry Garner. The question was, why wasn't Rachel at work? I was going to find out. I went back to the car and waited. I helped her into the car when they came out of the store carrying coffee cups. They drove off and I followed them at a discreet distance. They drove to our house and he went into the garage. The door came down and I couldn't see anything anymore. I sat there for 30 minutes, but thinking about the tire made me nervous. I kept checking it, but if it was going down, I couldn't see it. After 2 hours, they opened the door and walked past me. I held a folder in front of my face, but I don't think they noticed me. She was sitting right across from him and they were too busy looking at each other to notice anything else. Rachel didn't leave until 5 and it was 2:30. I'd have plenty of time. First, I'd have to go in and see what I found. I had to pick up Toby at 4 and I had no idea what I was going to tell her. Toby was my 15-year-old daughter. I couldn't imagine what I was going to find inside, but maybe I'd get some answers. When I entered, everything was quiet. I could hear the drip of the faucet that I needed to fix in the bathroom. It was the only sound besides the hiss of air coming from the vents. I looked around, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I looked up, they had changed the bed, and there were clean sheets. My heart sank like a stone. I leaned against the wall and slid down. I must have been sitting there for 30 minutes. My mind was on autopilot. I couldn't make sense of my thoughts, and I felt like I'd been drugged. I started to feel nauseous. I got up and grabbed a Sprite. I was hot and sweating, so I went back to the bathroom. I searched for a towel in the vanity, wet it in the sink, and washed my face with cold water. After washing, I felt a little better. Then I noticed something. The shower floor was wet. She had showered before returning to work. I went back to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, dazed. It was the bed my wife and her lover had just vacated. I recoiled at the thought and looked at it, horrified. This was the crime scene. I had no idea what I was going to do. Well, I was going to divorce Rachel, that was evident. But I had no idea. I didn't know any lawyers, I had no idea how to proceed, and I had to pick Toby up from school. Toby, what was I going to tell her? I headed to the car, feeling like I'd been drunk for 10 straight days. My head was pounding and I felt like death warmed over. I wasn't in any condition to drive, but I couldn't keep Toby waiting. Suddenly, I realized she was the only thing in my life I could truly count on, my girl. She was going to be okay. I'd have to take care of her, no matter what. When I stopped in the car line, I could see her waiting at the school gates, walking along the sidewalk toward the car. She was so beautiful it hurt my heart. Toby had her mother's dark hair and skin, almost Mediterranean. She had the most spectacular eyes I'd ever seen. They seemed to have the dark brown of her mother's eyes sprinkled with cold green flecks. The doctor called them hazel. But I had never seen anything like her. She was tall like me, with long and beautiful honey brown legs. She opened the back door and put her backpack in. When she came in, she slid over to kiss me and then stood still. "Dad, what's wrong?" she asked. Are you sick? Did something happen to you? Is mom okay? What's wrong? My voice raised and a note of fear was evident. I had to say something. I'm fine, sweetheart, I said. No one is hurt or sick or anything. I need to talk to you, Toby. Let's go to the park and let me hold you and talk to you for a minute, okay? Don't ask me any more questions until we get there, okay? Okay, Dad, but you're scaring me, she said. I know, kitten, but everything is going to be okay, I said, hoping it wasn't a lie. It only took us about 5 minutes to get to the park. I had pushed her on the swings 1,000 times before. Rachel and I had sat on the benches and watched her play happier times. That's what my life was going to be, remembering happier times. We walked to one of the benches and she took my hand, swinging our arms as we walked, just like she had done since she was little and could barely walk. We sat down and I struggled to find the words to start. Just tell me, Dad, she said. I can handle it. Well, I'm not sure I can, I said. The story came out in bursts. I told her everything, all that I had seen, all that I felt, and tears streamed down my cheeks like a river. She took my hand and when the fountain of words and feelings dried up, she curled up against me. That doesn't sound good, Dad, she said. We need to go home and ask Mom. I guess it all depends on what she tells us. I know it doesn't look good, but we don't know enough. We have to talk to her. I kissed her on the crown of her head. My heart swelled with pride. My baby was much braver than I was. She pulled on my hand until I got up. Do you want to drive? I asked her. Her eyes sparkled. She had just gotten her driver's license. A cloud passed over those beautiful eyes as she thought, but it passed quickly. She drove carefully home and Rachel's car was in the garage. That was it. We were greeted at the door with a hug and a kiss for each of us. She was either an Oscar-winning actress or I had misinterpreted the situation. Do you want takeout for dinner tonight? She asked. My treat. I think we need to talk with you for a moment, Mom, Toby said. Okay, everything okay, honey? I don't know, said Toby. Let's find out. We entered and I sat on the couch next to Toby, leaving Rachel seated in that awful chair she insisted on having. What's going on? She asked. There was not a trace of concern in her features. How was your day? I asked her. She looked at me curiously. The usual, she said. One of the drug reps brought lunch from the onion bin. It was pretty busy, barely had a minute. Why do you ask? So you were at the office all day? Toby asked. Of course, she said. What's with all the questions? What's going on? So you weren't at home here with Jerry Garner this afternoon? I asked. Her face paled. Of course not, she said. Are you accusing me of something, Oliver? I saw you, I said. You didn't see anything, she stammered. What are you trying to do? You're lying, Toby, said Rachel. I think you're lying. I won't ask Angel, he'd lie for you. I think I'll call David Jones. He's your boss, right? I don't think he'd lie for you. What's his number? He's gone for the night, said Rachel. I'll have him call you tomorrow. What are you doing? Are you trying to deceive me or something? Do you think you can come here and try to deceive me? What are you accusing me of? I guess she thought the best defense was a good offense. I think you've deluded yourself, I said. You lied, Rachel. We all know you lied. Why did you do that? I could see the wheels turning in her head. Okay, I was here, she said. This is why I didn't want to tell you. I knew you'd give me the 3rd degree and try to accuse me of something. No one's accusing you of anything, said Toby. I'm accusing you of something now. You're trying to make me believe Dad's a liar. You tried to make it look like Dad's a liar to cover up your lie. What are you lying about, Mom? You're having an affair with that jerk. You don't even know him, said Rachel. Why do you call him a jerk? I've seen him twice, said Toby. The way he looks at me makes me want to take a bath. That doesn't matter. You're having an affair with him. Rachel's eyes darted back and forth between us for a moment. She looked like a trapped animal. She didn't want it to be like this, I finally said. She wasn't ready. She wasn't ready for what? Toby asked. I just fell in love with Cherry, she said. She looked at me. I'm sorry, Oliver. It just happened. We work closely together, you know. He was just, I don't know. He's like the other half of me. We just clicked, and I couldn't help it. We're in love. I was going to tell you when we were ready. As soon as we can both get divorced, we're going to get married. I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to find out like this, Toby. Everything is going to be okay. You'll still see your dad whenever you want because I'm going to live with him. Jerry has a really nice house on the lake. He also has a daughter. She likes you and we're going to be very happy. You're not crazy, Toby. Toby practically exploded. I'm not going to live with that jerk. You're right. I'm going to see Dad whenever I want because I'm going to live with him. I'm not going to see you. How could you? She turned on her heels and went up to her room. I heard the lock on her door click. Rachel turned and looked at me. She'll get over it, said Jerry. He's a really good guy, Oliver. I think you like him. I'm sorry, but I need to be happy. Jerry makes me happy. And that's all. Istir tahia. Who was this person? It was like her body had been stolen or something. I wasn't going to argue with a dangerous lunatic. Whatever you say, Rachel, I said. When are you moving out? I'm not moving out. I have nowhere to go. He's married and we can't do anything until we tell his wife. We'll have to get divorced and see what the settlement is before we know what we have to do. You're not moving out, I said. I'm giving you 3 days, she said. What the hell are you talking about? You can't throw me out of my own house. If anything, you should be the one moving out. You're forgetting something, I said. This is my house. It was mine before I met you. It was paid for and I clearly owned it before we got married. The house is not a marital asset, it's mine. My name is on the deed and yours is not. You're not moving out of my house, she asked. Where? Are you going to kick me out onto the street? I don't care where, I said. Maybe you could get a room at the Cheaters Motel. Maybe one of those hourly reading places, you know, where you do the dirty. Right, that's where you do the dirty, isn't it? Her eyes welled up with tears. That hurts a lot, Oliver, she said. There's no need to be insulting. I didn't try to fall in love with Jerry, it just happened. We clicked, and I knew I needed to be with him. I wasn't trying to hurt you. You hurt me by accident, I said. Like when you trip with a knife in your hand and poke your eye out. Mom always warned me about that. Now I see it happening. Well, okay, then it was an accident. There's no need to be so sarcastic, she said. Why can't you accept that we're in love, Oliver? Come on. I don't know, Rachel, I said. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that when I left this morning, you told me you loved me. Now you're telling me you love him. I guess I'm a little confused. I love you, Oliver, she said. I will always love you. I'm just in love with Jerry. Oh, well, that explains everything, I said. So you've been telling me every day for the past 18 years that you love me, Rachel. I thought that's why we got married. We were in love. I guess I was delusional. Oh no, we were in love, she tried to reach for my hand. I pulled it away. You have 3 days, Rachel. If you're not out in 3 days, I'll have the sheriff drag you out and throw your stuff on the curb. Please, Oliver, she was now scared. It doesn't have to be like this. We can still be friends. Jerry wants to be your friend too. We have to think about Toby. I told you I love you and I don't want to lose you as a friend. We've been together too long to just throw it all away. I stared at her for a moment. I could feel all that sadness, all that loss, turning into seething anger. You must be crazy, Rachel, I said. Friends with that loser? I don't think so. You shouldn't tell that piece of shit that if he sees me, it should be briefly, just before he runs away as fast as he can. As for you, Rachel, you're the enemy. I'm going to burn your house down. You have 3 days. Then I don't want to see you again. I'll talk to a lawyer in the morning and you'll get your divorce as soon as possible. I turned and walked to the bedroom, leaving her standing there, making noises. That's all they were to me. She followed me everywhere, still spouting her nonsense about being friends all the time. I was moving her stuff to the guest bedroom. She had more clothes in the closet than I could carry. So I handed it to her. I took it to the guest bedroom and hung it in the closet. She followed me and stood there for a while, barking and looking at me, but when she went to hang up her clothes, I took the opportunity to leave and close the door to the bedroom. I heard her coming down the hall, but she tried the knob and left. Toby sent me a message after a few minutes. Are you okay, Dad? Yes, kitten. And you? No, but I will be, she said. Okay. I love you, I sent her. Message me if you need anything. Take me to school in the morning, she said. I don't want to be in the car with her. Okay, I got into bed and lay there for hours trying to figure out what to do. I must have fallen asleep around 3 o'clock and then my phone alarm went off. I got up, showered, called my boss, and told him I was getting a divorce and needed a few days off. He said to take as much time as I needed and went out of his way to tell me he was sorry. I went to make coffee, had a cup or two, and made breakfast for Toby and me. She came in just in time, as beautiful as ever, and she wolfed down breakfast. Rachel came in and grabbed a cup of coffee. After a while, she tried to talk to us, but we ignored her. It was time to take Toby to school and Rachel asked her if she was ready. Toby just looked at her, turned to me, and asked, Are you ready, Dad? I jingled the keys and she grabbed her backpack. Okay, you two can behave like 2-year-olds if it makes you feel better, Rachel said. She walked away and grabbed her purse, shot me one more glance, and left. I took Toby to school and she kissed me goodbye as she got out. I sat and watched her go in, thinking about my friend Dan, who had just gotten divorced. I decided to call him to see which lawyer he had used. He didn't recommend his lawyer. He told me to use his wife's lawyer. He gave me the name and I looked up the number. When I called, a woman answered the phone and put me on hold. After telling her what I wanted, she agreed to see me that afternoon and I made all the usual arrangements. We had investments and there wasn't much I could do about them. I could make sure she didn't run up the credit cards though, so I called and lowered the limits on her cards to $100. That would affect my lifestyle too, but there was no way I was going to finance her little plan. My appointment with Elizabeth Baxter didn't start auspiciously. She had made some assumptions and it took some disabusing her of them before we could start. She assumed I was going to trade Rachel in for a newer model. You have to think again, I told her. She's been having an affair with her coworker. He's married and they're both planning to get divorced and marry each other. I apologize, she said. I don't represent anyone who's making the kind of move you say she's making. I understand, I said. We have a daughter. I want to minimize the consequences. Do you think it's possible for me to get custody? It's possible, she said. In theory, either parent is considered to have equal chances of getting custody. In practice, parents rarely get custody, especially of girls. How old is she and is she likely to want to stay with you? She said yes and she's 15 years old, I said. I've said that will weigh heavily in the court's decision, she said. In this state, children over 14 can choose and the wishes of younger children are always taken into account. If she were much younger, you wouldn't have a chance of getting primary residence. And the fact that a 15-year-old girl wants to stay with you should be a significant part of the custody agreement. This shouldn't be a problem. Do your best, I told her. I drove home and wondered what I was going to do. I was going to do something, but it would have to be legal. Going to jail would cost me Toby, and I wasn't going to risk it. What avenues were open? You have to be careful when burning houses to make sure yours isn't burning. This would require reflection and planning. I suspected that Jerry's wife was as oblivious as I was, so the first step would be to let her know that I needed to make a list. I would definitely let his family know. Rachel's mother and father loved me, and they certainly loved Toby. So notifying them was first on the list. But I wasn't sure how to do it. Making sure all our friends knew as well was also on the agenda, and I thought I could stir up a storm on social media to make their lives miserable. That was first on my agenda. We had a Facebook account for our family. I played around with it, spent some time on Messenger, and knew how to navigate it. I searched online and found out that Jerry's wife was doing the same. I took a screenshot of some photos and posted on Rachel's page that I had found her soulmate in Jerry. I put up a picture of her, changed the password, and logged out. I felt good. I wondered how long it would be before her friends and family started blowing up her phone and Facebook page. I hoped Jerry's wife would understand the message. I didn't know her, and I felt a little guilty about the disaster that would befall her, but I preferred to know rather than be ignorant. I called Mom. The conversation went as badly as I thought it would, but beyond the initial disbelief, she told me she would tell Dad and that they were there for me for anything I needed. I decided I would let Rachel tell her parents that we were intimate and that I didn't want to be the cause of any distance between them. Anyway, I had no idea what I would tell them. Somehow, your daughter is a cheating loser didn't seem like the ideal message. They would probably shoot the messenger. Things didn't take long to get ugly. Around 2 p.m., Rachel's number showed up on my phone. I answered and she was angry. "You idiot," was her opening salvo. Her initial salvo gave me a great personal satisfaction. "You couldn't let it go, could you? I know you took me off Facebook. Take it down," she demanded. Jerry's wife doesn't know. All my friends are calling me asking what happened. My parents know. I'm telling you I'll never take it down. You weren't my boss, I said. What, are you 5? Take it down, Oliver. I'm telling you why, I asked. It should be fine. Everyone can get used to you and your soulmate being like this. Aren't you ashamed that people know you're a pathetic cheater, Rachel? I'm not, she stopped. Obviously, she realized the absurdity of what she was about to say. Oliver, please take it down. It wasn't supposed to be like this. You lost all ability to choose when it would be like at the moment you cheated on me, I said. Any right to consideration, any right you had to my respect, or even courtesy, vanished. I told you. Now you're the enemy, Rachel. Get used to it. I ended the call. My phone rang again immediately, but I ignored it. It was time to pick up Toby. I told her about the outcome of my conversation with Elizabeth Baxter, and while she was glad that she would likely be with me overall, she was not happy at all. What's wrong, Dad? She asked me. You know I love her, but she's always been a little crazy. I've never felt like an adult with her, not like with you. Have you noticed? No, I said. Now that you mention it, she's always been somewhat impulsive, but she's always been that way. I never thought she would do something like this. Well, we're going to have to do the best we can, Dad said. I don't want to be in the same house with that loser without you there. I don't care what you have to do, make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, I'll do my best, I promised. We bought pizza on the way home and I was enjoying my second slice when my phone rang. It was Bob, Rachel's father. I wasn't thrilled. I told Toby, who was it, and she said to put it on speaker. He got straight to the point. Oliver, I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but Rachel came last night and asked if she could stay with us. Would you mind explaining how it happened? Did you ask her? I did, but she said no. Why didn't she tell you? Why not? He asked. Are you sure you don't want to wait for her explanation? I asked. Can't you tell me? How do you know? Did you catch them together yesterday? I said. Besides, she told me. Are you sure you haven't misunderstood? Toby spoke up. Grandpa. I've been listening to Dad, he has you on speaker. There's no misunderstanding. I was there when she said it. I am sorry, Grandpa. I love you. She sobbed and he heard her when she spoke again. Her voice was breaking. Don't cry, sweetheart, please be strong. I love you too and Grandma does too. I'll try to talk some sense into your mother. I love you. Are you still there? Yes, sorry, Bob. Don't worry about Toby, you and Grandma are her grandparents and nothing will change that. I know you love Rachel and you'll do what you have to do. I respect you more than I have words to tell you. I hope you don't hate me when this is over. That will never happen, he said. I'll find out what's going on. Call me if you need anything. It's gone better than I feared. Stuff happens. You do the best you can. It's not necessary to detail what happened in the divorce process. Most people know many people who have gone through it. It was long, painful, and I never grieved, apparently. Rachel was delusional. She had imagined that she would gain custody of Toby, but that didn't happen. Miss Baxter was as good as advertised. I obtained full custody based on Toby's desire to live with me, and after hearing Toby in a private meeting, the judge ruled that Rachel had unrestricted visitation rights but none that involved Toby being alone with her and Jerry Garner. That became a non-issue anyway. His wife divorced him, but it seemed that the soulmate thing had been a bit exaggerated, at least on his part. 2 weeks after I discovered their affair, he was on to a new conquest. All those grand plans evaporated like mist on a sunny day. The divorce took 7 months to be finalized. Rachel changed her mind. I was surprised that at her second appearance in court, she asked the judge to order therapy. Nothing that Miss Baxter or I could say seemed to make sense, and the judge ordered it. We were to have 8 to 10 sessions. We got a weird old hippie as our spiritual guide. In the first session, we were asked to state our goals. Rachel's was long and convoluted. It seemed like she thought I should realize that seeking her happiness was the main goal of the universe and that I should understand that she hadn't meant any harm, just happiness. Mine was much simpler. What are your goals in these sessions, Mr. Berman? Asked our guide. My goal is to end them, I said. Our spiritual guide frowned. Mr. Berman, you're not really interested in working on the issues that led your marriage to this point, said Mr. Rotman. I'm sorry, Mr. Rotman, but it wasn't my problems that led my marriage to this point, and I really have no interest in working on them. I'm quite happy with my problems and fully intend to die with them. Rachel was as horrified as Mr. Guru, and she didn't hesitate to leap in bravely. Oliver, how do you expect us to get back to where we were if you weren't willing to at least discuss this? I didn't say I wanted to get back to where we were. Let that be clear to both of you. I don't care about getting back to where we were or working on the problems. I'm here because of a court order. I'll do whatever is necessary to satisfy that court order, then we'll go back to court and get divorced. That's my plan. Are you aware that if I go back to the judge and report that you're refusing to cooperate, you could be cited for contempt? Said our guide. I'm not aware of that, I said. You mean if you go back to the judge and lie, these sessions will be recorded? I'm sure my lawyer would be delighted to cite the recordings and expose your perjury. I'm here. I'm doing everything you say to do. You asked me my goals, I told you. What are yours? You see, I'm cooperating, I said, making her blush. I'm sure the judge expected you to try and work out the issues between you two. I'm not responsible for the judge's expectations. I told you I'm only responsible for mine, I said. She tried to make it difficult for me. She gave me homework that included spending quite a bit of time with Rachel and diligently worked to wear me down. Oliver, what will it take for you to drop the divorce and work this out? She asked. An act of God, I said. She waited for me to explain, but I said nothing. What do you mean by an act of God? She finally asked. Well, if you have a way to go back in time and not cheat on the old and dear Jerry, that would work. Otherwise, I've never heard of anyone other than God with that power. Have you developed powers you haven't told me about, Rachel? Aside from the power to attract other men with your feminine charms? We did a monotonous exercise after another and finally they were over. We went back to court and the judge asked us if we had made any progress. Your Honor, there's no chance my client will stay married to his wife, said Elizabeth Baxter. We'd like this divorce to be granted as quickly as possible. My client and his daughter have already been dragged through this process for too long. Apparently, the judge agreed because 10 days later, the decree arrived by mail. Toby saw her mother quite a bit as she wanted to see her grandparents and spent a lot of time with them. Rachel occasionally planned something Toby consented to do with her, but it was never the same. She went out with her friends and one in particular seemed to be at the top of her list. She was a little blonde named Sabrina. She practically lived with us, was as cute as a month-old kitten and as sweet as honey. I was glad to have her and they started including me in some of their activities. One of the things they liked the most was water skiing. We had a boat and when summer vacation started, most Saturdays we found ourselves at one of the nearby lakes. One Monday, they asked if we could go to the lake for the weekend, take our RV, and stay until Sunday night. Since my social calendar wasn't exactly full, it seemed like a great plan. Toby and Sabrina spent the week planning and on Thursday we packed everything they wanted. On Friday afternoon, a new red Jeep Cherokee pulled up in our driveway and Sabrina jumped out. An almost identical female jumped out of the driver's side and Toby went and threw herself at this unknown female in a strong hug. She and Sabrina led the unknown and clearly nervous female towards me. Dad, said Toby. This is Julie. She's Sam's mom and I know you haven't met her yet. Julie reached out her hand. Ulibe. The girls have told me a lot about you. Thank you so much for inviting me to go with you this weekend. To be honest, I've been a little jealous of them spending so much time with you instead of me. She smiled mischievously, and instantly I understood why her daughter was so charming. I glanced at Toby and she shot me a glare that made my knees tremble and I knew when to relent. The tremor intensified when I looked at Sam and she raised an eyebrow. It's going to be awesome, I said to Julie, regaining my speech faculties. We always have a great time. I'm not dumb, she looked from me to the girls and then back to me. Oh my God, she said. You didn't know, did you, girls? She didn't get a chance to say another word. She was buried in an avalanche of hugs, kisses, and please, please, Mom, don't worry, we'll have so much fun. Is Sabrina okay, Julie? Dad will love you as much as he loves me, and he's a great guy, Toby said, gesturing to how she followed your lead. She disentangled herself and looked at them. You two go sit on the porch and I'll talk to Oliver, she said. They showed some reluctance and she said they didn't take her seriously and shooed them away. I'm so sorry, Oliver. I had no idea, she said. I'm going to take Sam's and leave. She'll be grounded for a month. God, this is embarrassing. She seemed so small and embarrassed that I stepped forward and hugged her. At first, she stiffened, but then she relaxed. Yes, it's embarrassing, I said. They're very mischievous. But you and I know they're not bad. Let me guess, you're not married, she looked at me and laughed. God, she was cute. No, I'm not. Do you think that's it? I'm pretty sure, I said. Here's the deal. You've packed your bags, cleared your weekend. It's going to be beautiful at the lake. I'm not a bad guy, which you know from being around Toby. Let's play along. It'll be fun. We could tweak them a bit. What do you say? She took a step back, looked at the expectant faces of the girls, and said, Sure, let's. I gave them the go-ahead, and they jumped up, running to join us. I heard Toby let out an exuberant yes. I stopped them and grabbed one under each arm. That wasn't very nice, I said. Sam looked at me and laughed with her best Skeletor voice. I'm not nice, she said. That separated us all, and I couldn't keep up. They were too cute and innocent. We know what you're trying to do, I said. Stop it, I'm serious. You can't go around trying to fix other people's lives. Yes, but I love jewelry and I didn't know how to introduce you, she protested. Well, you could have told me, I said. She looked a little sad. It's okay, Kitty, but don't do it again, I said. She perked up immediately. Sam tugged at my arm. Let's go. I can't wait. This is going to be sick. Gross, Oliver. You'll see, she said. Julie laughed. I think that's supposed to be the ultimate in really cool, Oliver, she said. She's right, though. We're killing daylight. We grabbed 2 bags from her Jeep and got in. We hooked up the boat and after a stop for gas, we set off. It took half an hour to reach the lake and Julie sat in front with me. The girls played some awful music through their Bluetooth connections and we caught up. Julie had her own insurance company and it turned out she also did financial planning. I absorbed it while looking at her during the conversation. God, she was beautiful. I thought Sam would look like her when she was Julie's age. She seemed much younger than me, but it turned out it was only 3 years. She was probably 5 feet 3 inches, had light blonde hair down to her lower back, and a nice tan. She had huge brown eyes, high cheekbones, and a perfect heart-shaped face with a widow's peak and a broad forehead. She wore jeans and a button-down shirt, but she was slim and slender. I didn't want to perv, so I didn't notice her until we got to the lake. We found a spot to park the boat and the RV, and they kicked me out while they changed. In the meantime, I hooked up the water. When they finished changing, I put on swim trunks and a t-shirt, and we were ready. We grabbed a cooler full of drinks and set off. We left the no-wake zone and started the motor. We cruised a couple of miles across the lake, and they were ready to ski. They took off their long shirts, and the girls were their usual clumsy beauty. Charlie was something else. There was nothing odd about her. I said she was slim, but she was tiny. She was all woman. When she turned to watch the girls go by, I almost lost it. She turned and caught me looking at her, smiled, and winked. Dunn asked her, and her smile took away the itch. Her teeth were perfect, too. I laughed for a moment. You know what you look like, Charlie? I'm a man. She came over and sat where she could talk to me and watch the girls. We spent 3 hours skiing, and she turned out to be very good. She drove the boat while I took my turn, and she was good too. I wasn't as good as her or the girls. Physics was against me, but I held up. We went back to the park and they set up ramps. The RV had a perfectly equipped kitchen, but the girls wanted to cook outside. We took out the stove and I made a fire on the camping grill. Bradwell cut and fried potatoes and onions and opened cans of pork and beans. We had prepared and packed some meals at home, but this was our first night at camp. Cooking is always delicious. We sat at the picnic table provided by the campsite, and we felt like we had known each other for a lifetime. Charlie became Jules, as the girls called her, and she liked it and called me Hall. The girls mentioned several times that Jules wasn't married, and finally, I asked her why. I mean, God. You're gorgeous, funny, smart, you have your own business. Why hasn't any man but you? She was silent for a moment. Well, the main reason is Sabrina, she said finally. I was young and dumb. Ollie was in her last year of college, and I thought I had the love of my life. I found out I was pregnant a week before graduation. I wasn't very unhappy. We had talked about getting married as soon as we graduated. I guess that plan didn't work out since you're talking about it in the past tense, I said. No, it didn't. 3 days after telling Brandt, I found out he had been cheating on me for a month. I left him and never looked back. When Sam was born, I didn't have time for a social life for a while. Then I found myself caught up in building my business. By the time I could catch my breath and even think about dating someone, I realized I had this precious gift from God in my life, and I couldn't do anything without considering her. I understood, I said. I feel the same way about Toby. As long as I have him, he comes first. You don't know how important she is to me. She put her hand on my arm. I know, she said. She tells us everything, Sam and me. I'm really sorry, Ollie. Yeah, life sucks sometimes. We both sighed, looked up, and saw 2 pairs of approving and affectionate eyes staring at us. They were engaged in a whispered conversation, sitting on camping chairs under the canopy. I love your company, I said to Jules. It feels like she's almost mine all the time she spends with us. She loves you too, she said. The other day she told me you're like the father she never had. When I looked at her, those huge brown eyes had become liquid and a tear fell down her small brown cheek. I brushed it away with the back of a finger. She's a great kid, I said. I think her mother is a very special woman for raising a girl like that. You're pretty brave for doing it alone, she smiled with those wide eyes. She got up, kissed my cheek, and went to join the girls. We had a great weekend, and as she was about to leave, I approached and tapped her window. Jules, would you consider going out with me next Friday? I asked. Sam squealed with joy, and Jules smiled with that intermittent smile. What time? She asked. 6, I said. We'll have dinner and do something afterward, okay? Oh, can Toby stay with Sam while we're out? Sounds great. And of course, she kissed my cheek and they left. Toby was waiting for me at the entrance. Did you ask her out? He asked. I hugged him and gave him a pat on the back. Yes, I did. And it's none of your business, I said. He chuckled with the same sound Sam had made. He knew. She's perfect for you, Dad. I really like her and Sam's like my sister, I shrugged. What's up, Toby? Can't force it. Stop playing matchmaker, he snuggled into my chest. I know, Dad, but you were never going to do anything but love me if I didn't do something. It's not that I don't like being the only woman in your life, I laughed. Well, you'll always have a place in my heart that no one else can touch. You're my baby, and that's never going to change. He purred and snuggled with me for a minute before going to do Toby stuff. Our first date went well. I took her racquetballing. She was new to the sport, but she played tennis, and the mechanics of the strokes were very similar. Once she got used to the rules and hitting the walls, she did well. Being an athlete came in handy. She was fast as lightning and could change direction much faster than me. Her small size worked in her favor there. We were cooling off at a table outside the courts. After finishing our drinks and resting, she grabbed her phone. "Let's take pictures of the kids," she said. We posed with our rackets and goggles, and she took a picture of us. They responded right away, and we had a nice memento. We showered together, and I took her out to eat. It was a really good Italian restaurant, and we took pictures. We were finishing our wine, Yul sitting beside me in the booth, and we leaned back, talking quietly and laughing. It felt natural to put my arm around her, so I did. She leaned into me and smiled. I thought again about how beautiful she was, and I realized I always would. It was something that wasn't going to change with age. She leaned towards me as we arrived at her house and looked at me expectantly. I realized she wanted me to kiss her. So I did. I wanted to kiss her even more than she probably wanted to be kissed. It was a long, delicious kiss. Her lips were soft and plush, and when we pulled away, she tasted like wine and cherry caramel. I noticed the curtains moving. "I think we have an audience," I mentioned. She giggled, sounding much like her daughter. Or maybe her daughter sounds like her. "I'm not surprised. You know they're trying to hook us up, right?" I asked. She blushed. "I don't like everything I know about you, Wally," she said. "I feel the same way," I said. "We'd better go in before they tear the curtains down." We went inside, and for months, we became closer. I wanted our relationship to progress. I didn't want to pressure her, but some of our sessions were getting pretty steamy. In the end, I found that I liked having her as a friend almost as much as a girlfriend. We talked constantly on the phone. She sent me jokes or funny messages several times a day, and I did the same. I saw or heard something and knew Jules would find it funny, so I had to share it with her. We started having dinner together every Tuesday, and we just hung out, played, and I was almost as in love with Sam as her mother. They were very similar. If you knew one, you knew the other almost as well. There were subtle and big differences, but both were completely charming, and the differences only accentuated the similarities. Life was great, and the only cloud was Rachel's constant presence. She was still part of Toby's life and therefore mine. I didn't want anything to do with her, and seeing her irritated me. She never stopped trying to talk to me every time she came to pick up Toby or I dropped her off at her grandparents' house. She still lived with them, having lost her job along with Jerry at the clinic and working at another private one across town. If she annoyed me too much, I'd ask her if she knew anything about him. That usually quickly ended her attempts. "How long will it take for you to forgive me?" she asked me once. "Forgive you? For what?" I asked. "For what I know," she said. "No, I don't think you've done anything wrong. Not once have I heard." "I'm sorry, Oliver. I messed up. I'm sorry. I tried to make Toby believe you were a liar. I'm sorry I tried to keep her away from you. I tried to screw you over in the divorce and worst of all, not listening to you even once. Forgive me. I cheated on you and slept with that scum behind your back. I didn't listen then, so I couldn't take responsibility for my actions. I really didn't know what forgiving her would entail. I was reconciled and at peace. I hadn't forgotten, but I wasn't going to waste a single bitter moment on it. People have the right to make mistakes. They have the right to divorce you, to get rid of you and their friendships, and you just accept it and move on. People do stupid things every day in the heat of the moment. I wanted to punish the two cheaters, but I quickly got over it. Their punishment was being who they were. They had to live with themselves. I had every intention of living with myself, and that meant leaving behind the lies and deceit and living my best life. Rachel was a miserable woman, and I sincerely wished her all the bad luck in the world as well as to the old and dear Jerry, but I wouldn't count on my hand that God or the universe would punish them. I was out of that game. She got even sadder when she found out I was dating Jules. She had left Toby with her grandparents for the night, and as she walked to the car, she stopped me. "I heard you're dating Toby's friend's mom," she said. I just looked at her. "Is that so?" "Yes," she snapped. "I'm your wife. I have a right to know." "You have no rights," I said. "You're not my wife. You found your soulmate, and it wasn't me, remember? Then came this thing called divorce. My business is no longer yours, and yours is no longer mine. Rachel, don't stick your nose in mine." I was steaming as I left. I told Toby what had happened. He was as angry as I was. I ended up leaving her with her grandparents or Rachel picking her up at their house. Bob and Cindy, the grandparents, came to our house and picked her up from then on. That eliminated a major source of stress in my life. On our 7th anniversary of the lake trip, I went out with Jules. We went to a nice restaurant and a club. She didn't drink much, just a beer now and then or a glass she had that night. I raised an eyebrow when she ordered a second. "Yes, tonight I'm wild and crazy." "You're perfect as always," I said. "Really, Chris?" Wally, she moved her hand away in that way she had. I think you're pretty perfect too. If I'm so perfect, why haven't you invited me to spend the night? I must have looked pretty startled because she left. You haven't even thought about it, have you? Yes, Jules, I haven't thought about anything else since the first day on the boat when I saw you in a bikini. When we started dating, I realized you were something different, something special, and I didn't want to pressure you or scare you. You won't scare me, she said. I told the girls not to wait up. Seriously, what are we doing here? I asked. Oh my God, Jules, let's get out of this place. Do you want to spend the night with me? She blushed as she took my hand and let me help her up. More than anything in the world right now, she practically clung to me as we left and leaned her head on my shoulder, taking my arm for the entire ride. I let go when we got to the bedroom. I turned at the foot of the bed, and it was one of the most incredible kisses I had ever been given. And it continued. When we stopped to breathe, she looked at me, and I drowned in the warm brown color of her eyes. She wrapped her arms around my neck and looked me in the eyes. Make love to me, Oliver, she said. I'm a little scared. Don't be, I said. I love you, Julie Barnes. You know that, right? I thought you already had, she murmured. I needed to hear it. I love you too, Oliver, she said. We fell asleep in each other's arms, and twice during the night we made love again, once when I initiated it and once when she did. The next morning I woke up lying on my back with an angel half lying on top of me. Her hair covered us and her cheek was resting in the hollow of my shoulder. I lay there watching her sleep, absent-mindedly playing with her hair until she opened her eyes. She snuggled closer and sighed. I belong here, Ollie. I know, I said. Would you like to wake up here every morning? I asked. She opened her eyes and looked at me. You mean live together, right, honey? Well, yes, but I mean, would you marry me, Jules Barnes? She slid her finger. It was too big and we would have to resize it, but for now it would do. She lifted it and looked at it. It's beautiful, she said. It looks old. Where did you get it? When did you buy it? Do you remember when I said I was going to an auction? I asked. About a month ago? Yes, I remember. They were auctioning off an estate, right? Yes, they were. What I didn't tell you is that I saw this ring in the catalog and I went with the intention of buying it and asking you to marry me. It was made in England around 1810 for the Duchess of Avon. It has a long history. Do you like it? I love it, she said. It's the most beautiful ring I've ever seen. Are you going to answer my question? I asked. What? Oh yes, Oliver, I'll marry you. Oh my God, yes, I laughed and squeezed my fiancé in my arms. We have to call the girls, I said.